Okay, cool. So one more time, hello to each of you guys, and I hope that you are well. I do a quick review on what we had in the previous session. Specifically, in our tonight session, I will focus a little bit more on open source and different open source platforms that we have. And as discussed before, tomorrow in our Thursday class, I will go to our assessment task 2 and we will have a closer look on some of the security and automation tools that we may find in a Microsoft server, Windows server. It should be in our tomorrow class. For now, we just have a chat about the copyright yesterday. As discussed, a per copyright protects the creation of mines and it's an automatic thing. As discussed before, it's protect any expressions of your idea also, but copyright doesn't protect the ideas by themselves or thoughts or concepts and methods. They need to turn to a form of expression like a song, a music, a movie, and a script, a code, a software, or those kind of things. We can use copyrighted materials without violating the copyright in the situations that we call it fair use or fair dealing. And in the previous sessions, we had a brief chat about a couple of those situations that we can use copyrighted materials without being in the violation of copyright rule. The cases that we discussed in the previous sessions for educational purposes. So if you are using copyrighted materials for learning or teaching purposes without having the intention to sell or publish them in a public websites, it's not on the violation of copyright rule. Also, if you use copyrighted material for educational use, but without having the intention to share it on a commercial basis or something like that, it's not on the violation of the act. Fair dealing, if you are using for research or a study, so you can use a copy or a reasonable copy or portion of copyrighted material for research if it's only for your own learning, if it's not publicly shared, and if it's provided with appropriate referencing. Again, there is no risk of being under violation. Fair dealing for criticism or review, there is another situations that you may use the content to analyze, comment, review, or something like that with the acknowledgements of the source. Again, that's a case of fair deal and it's not under violation. Fair dealing for parody or satire, again, that's another case that it's totally fine if you use copyrighted content to create humorous or critical content. And obviously, when we have the permissions to use those copyrighted materials, it's totally fine to use it. The other case that we discussed in the previous sessions was public domain. Public domain, this is a content free for anyone to use. So sometimes the copyrighted materials, they may expire like after 70 years of the date of creation or date of death of the creator. So it's changed to public domain, which means that we are free to use those type of contents. If the creator gives up their rights on a volunteer basis, so again, there is no risk of being under violation of copyright. It's a public domain. Sometimes government also release a specific content, like all educational textbook, like government data sets and databases, like old patents, word list for penetration testing, malware data sets, or some scripts that used in automation. It might be in public domain, which means that we are able to use it freely. Also, we have a chat about the open source and closed source, as discussed in the previous sessions. Closed source or priority assets or softwares, they are softwares owned by another entity, and the source code is usually hidden. It means that we do not have access to the source code. Softwares or operating systems like Windows or Mac OS or iOS, there are different types of closed source. For this type of closed source softwares, they require licensing. If you want to use those type of softwares or applications, we need to get the license and we need to use those softwares according to the license terms and conditions. Usually they're controlled by the vendors and they have security through security, which means that the source code is not available and um, there is no information about the code. In the other side, we may have open source softwares, which means that the source code is publicly available. They are free to use in most of cases. Linux, Nmap, Wireshark, Python, Apache, Metasploit, or Android, there are cases of open source softwares, which means that we have access to the resource code and we can use it. So they are freely available to use in most cases. They have a big community driven around those type of softwares because it's free and anyone is able to use them. Security through transparency. So they have a different approach to secure and protect their services, and it's through transparency. Licensing still applies. The other things that we discussed about the open source that we're going to go have a closer look on this type of open source softwares. We must follow some license rules like GPL that I'm going to discuss about GPL in our tonight class. It means that if you use an open source content and you modify it or change it or redistribute it, we have to change we need to remain on open source. It means that you are using an open source software and you change it, modify it, and you create your own version. Our own version also should be on an open source basis. So GNU, I reckon it's better for me to switch to the PowerPoint presentations because from GPL we have good content available in our PowerPoint presentation, which is already available in additional resources in Video Collaborate. Let me reshare my screen and have a look on that content. Sharing my screen. It's a screen one. Cool. So this is the second PowerPoint presentations that, as I said, you can easily find it in our View Collaborate in the additional resources. And as you see, different types of copyright licenses. GNU or General Public License. We have a brief chat about this in our previous class. There are a couple of examples like Linux kernel. We discussed about this in the previous sessions. So imagine that there is a kernel, like a core sets of codes, and then specifically for different purposes, there might be different versions or different distributions of Linux being created, as discussed in our previous class, like Linux Ubuntu, Mint, Fedora, Red Hat, and so many, or Kali, that they all design and created for specific purposes. WordPress also, if you want to create a website, WordPress is another type of these GPL licenses that you can use those templates to create your own website. So GNU tools. Let's have a brief chat about this type of GPL. It's one of the most popular free software licenses that you may know. It's the GNU GPL or GNU General Public License. And obviously, it's play a very important role in the world of open source software. So what it does, the GPL allows you to freely use, modify, and redistribute the softwares, making it a very popular choice for many open source projects, like for Linux. There are so many distributions designed for different purposes. A key concept in GPL is copyleft. In our previous session also, we had a chat about copyright and then we had a chat about copyleft. What was copyleft? A copyleft means if you modify a GPL license software, like those changes that you may have in Linux or Nmap or etc., all new versions, all new derivatives should remain open source. I had an analogy or had an example in the previous sessions, like a chef having a recipe. So if I share that recipe, if that chef shares that recipe, and all others, they get that recipe, they use it as a base, but they modify the recipe by, for example, changing the ingredients, changing the amount of each ingredients, and create something new. So the base is coming from someone else's recipe, but it's something new. It should remain open source. It means that the new versions also needs to be available. For example, if a developer adds a new feature, some new options or new features. If they add some new features to a GPL license applications, they are required to share that features under the same license. One of the main aspects of GPL is that once a software is licensed under it, it stays that way. Further versions or all new features, all new versions Also, they should remain free and open source for all people. So imagine I share my recipe. For example, in our class, imagine Connor get that recipe and he creates his own version. He publish it. Again, someone else can get that new recipe, modify it, change it. All of those new versions should remain open source. It means that they should be freely available under the license. So what it does, it helps to preserve the original goal of free software. And obviously, it's one of the main driver of growing open source platforms because any contributions to improve it, to modify it, to change it, to add extra features, extra options to it will be also available for free. Exactly like what happened to Python. There are hundreds and hundreds of libraries now available, and they all grown up and build up around Python as a core programming language. All of them are freely available. So just like the libraries that we use in our previous programming unit, you can use that library if you reckon that you might be able to improve it, add some new features, some new options to make it even better. So you will do that, and it will help the community to grow. It will help those open source services or softwares to grow. Understanding this GPL is very important because if you are working with or contributing to open source projects, it will ensure that all those derivatives or all those new additions also will remain accessible and also free for all the users and developers. So as you see here in this slide, it allows the user to freely use, modify, and redistribute the software, and also to making it popular for open source projects like Linux. Copyleft is a core principle. It ensures that modifications to a GPL license work still remain open source. Any software derived from a GPL license automatically inherits the GPL license, meaning it must also be distributed under the same license. Once a software is licensed under the GPL, it will remain free for anyone to use, including all its features and versions, which is awesome, and that's one of the reasons for growing this open source. As you see also in the right charts, examples of GPL's key features. Key features of GPL is freedom to use. It allows anyone to use this type of software for any purposes. Copyright is another feature of GPL. It means it requires all derivatives to be distributed under the same license. Freedom to modify. It permits any modifications to the source code. Freedom to distribute. It grants the right to distribute original or modified software. And also, if you have a look on the uh, yellow part of this chart, you see the implications. There are some legal obligations like derivatives also should include the source code. So as I said, imagine that I'm a chef, I have a recipe. Connor used my recipe and created something new. Then Francis used Connor's recipe and he created something new. Just like that, it keeps growing. But all of those new additions, new versions or derivatives, they also need to disclose the source code. Users also, they have to comply with the GPL terms and conditions when they are redistributing compatibility challenges. Sometimes it may conflict with some other software licenses. It protects user freedom. I have a video also that I show you, and it's discussing about open source being free or freedom. So it protects user freedom. It means that it prevents proprietary restrictions on modified versions, and also it promotes collaborations. It encourages open source community to develop and improve by just providing new versions and new editions. So it's constantly growing and evolving. Also, closed source platforms, they provide some facilities to allow a little bit of more flexibility to allow. We will have a look on this even in our tonight class. Even closed source platforms, they are working or they may have some of their services being open source or providing a platform for open source libraries just to collaborate and grow inside their closed platforms. Let's move on. Different types of copyright licenses. The next one is library general public license. So it's I would say it's pretty close to GPL. But what it means, the light version or the Library General Public License, LGPL. So whatever we had in the GPL, just assume and just keep in mind anything that I discussed about GPL. But we know that what is GPL? It was in our previous slide, General Public License. So it allows to have libraries. What is library? Imagine again the case of our previous unit. In our programming unit, we learn about libraries in Python. And if you remember, one of the functions of libraries was to improve the functionality of Python. Exactly the same way that in your phone or your iPad, you have different types of applications, and it helps you to improve the functionality of your phone or the functionality of your laptops. Libraries also, they serve different purposes for security, for AI, for automation, and etc. And by using those libraries, we are able to improve the functionality of Python as a core programming language. So it's pretty the same. The LGPL offers more flexibility to GPL compared to GPL. What it does, it helps and it allows the developers to use and integrate open source components into their own projects. Even, that's the very important part of it, even if the projects are closed source. So imagine that there is a closed source project or a platform. It means that we do not have access to the source code. It it's protected under copyright, but it provides a platform to develop open source components. The key difference, as discussed, is that you do not have to release the source code of your entire application. Only the changes that you make to the LGPL is covered components. In practice, for example, it means that you can use an LGPL license library in a proprietary applications without any issue. For example, imagine you are developing a proprietary phone applications and you want to use an LGPL license library to handle in-app animation, for example. So what you can do, you can integrate that library into your app without making your whole code database open source. As you see in this slide, it says what are the key differences or key features and implications of LGPL. The LGPL, it allows the developers to use and integrate LGPL licensed software components into their own software, even if it's proprietary or if it's closed source. It doesn't require developers to release the source code of their own proprietary components. Any modifications made to LGPL component, it's still made available under the same LGPL license. If you just have a look on the features of LGPL and compare it with the previous one, you see that it's pretty similar in terms of the key features and implications. The key features pretty the same, freedom of use, so it permits using proprietary applications. Modification must also made available under LGPL, not GPL. Limited copyleft, it's one of the differences. In the GPL, we had copyleft, but LGPL, limited copyleft. It means that only allows linking with non-GPL software. And also freedom of distribution, it grants the right to distribute original or modified library. In terms of flexibility, still it enables a broader range of adoptions in mixed license environments. In terms of the legal obligations, you see that it requires disclosure of modification to the LGPL library. Compatibility challenges, sometimes it may require careful compliance with LGPL terms and conditions. Examples of LGPL also, as you see in the purple color. There are 3 examples here, like FFmpeg and some other versions. Okay, let's move on. There are some other common open source licenses. Just need to know about them and their names. Some other copyright licensing, it might be Mozilla Public License or MPL, BSD, Apache license. So each of them, they have their own specific terms and conditions, but they all aim to promote free use and sharing of their software. The key differences of and principles for each of these ones, these licenses may differ in how they handle the distributions, modifications, and use of code in the software. The general principle is to ensure the software is still freely available in respect of the original developers and contributors. Permission is granted free of charge to any person obtaining a copy of this software and all the associated documentations files. To deal in the software without restrictions, including, I just read it from the slide, to deal in the software without restrictions, including without limitation, the rights to use, copy, modify, merge, publish, distribute, sub-license, and selling copies of the software, and also to permit persons to whom the software is furnished to do. So the above copyright notice, and this is the permission notice, shall be included in all copies or substantial portions of this software. For example, in the previous slides, you saw about the FFmpeg. It's a very popular multimedia library used for video players, for video editing applications, the streaming software. GStreamer is another example of LGPL. It's used in products for media players and mobile applications. Also, GTK is another example of LGPL. It's used in genome applications like in Linux utilities, in cross-platforms tools, and there are so many other LGPL as well. Let's move on. The other things that we need to discuss is Creative Commons licensing. Creative Commons licensing, or CC, understanding the basic and the types. So continuing from our discussions on open source licensing and other important types of these Creative Commons license or CC licenses, they are especially helpful when sharing digital content like softwares or images or videos. So CC license, it gives the creators some type of control over how their work can be used. So imagine that you created something like a photo, a video, a chart, a repo, or something, and you want to have a little bit of more control over how your product can be used. So CC will give you that option. CC licenses, it gives you more control as a creator of some content. CC gives you more control on how your work can be used. And still, it's freely available, but you can limit it down. There are four elements of CC licenses that we see here. Attribution or BY. So users have to credit the original creators, like mentioning the author of a photo used in a website. Imagine that it's a photo. If it's protected under BY, it means that when you're using that photo, you need to put appropriate referencing when you're using that photo in your websites. Another element is NC or non-commercial. It means that you can use it, but not to make money. So NC or non-commercial, if a creator chooses this, it means that their work, such as a software, a photo, or whatever, it cannot be used to make money. No derivatives, so probably you can guess what it means. ND or no derivative, it means that the users can share their work like a photo, but they cannot edit or change it. So you see that there are all different types of open source licensing. In general, when we've been talking about open source, as discussed, it was openly and freely available for anything, including editing, changing, redistributions, and etc. But here, if a license is ND, it means that you can use it. You can use that photo, you can use that chart, you can use that um, part of software or scripts, but we cannot make any changes to it. We just need to use it as it is. And eventually we have share alike or SA. So if someone changes a piece of software under this license, it means they have to share their changes under the same rules. Exactly the same way that they got that software for free. If they have any improvements, changes, or adjustments, it should be also freely available. Here in the yellow boxes, you see BY. Credit must be given to creator. So you have a summary of all of these. ND, it prohibits any modifications to the original work. NC, it prohibits the usage for commercial purposes. SA, derivatives works also should be licensed under the same similar terms and conditions. And also in the pink and purple boxes, you see the benefits of CC, you see the challenges of CC, how, for example, to control and how to find and assess misuse or misunderstanding of licenses, how to check or how to enforce this mechanism. It's pretty hard, to be honest. It's not easy to track and control all of these types of softwares, obviously in a big public target market. Anyway, we just want to need to be a little bit familiar with these names. So Creative Commons or CC, what is it? As discussed, it's free distribution. Creative Commons license, it allows the creator to have more control over their softwares, over their images, their videos, or their content, rather than having it available for any redistributions, modifications, and etc. It gives the author or the creator more controls, permissions to share. So creators can decide if others are able only to copy, to use, to change, or etc. So they have more control over it. Here in this next slide also, you will see a little bit more about different types of CC, attribution, CC, BY. It means that others are able to use, remix, adapt, and even use your work commercially, like incorporating a design template into their websites, as long as they credit you. That's the first element of CC. Share alike, it means that if they've done any changes, they need also to provide the changes to the future users. Others can adapt your work for commercial purposes, like changing or modifying a design or an icon or a software or an script or whatever, but they must also credit you and license new works under the same terms. Non-derivatives, it means that it's not possible to modify or change the original work. It only allows the users to use the content, but no changes or modifications are allowed. So that's non-derivatives or ND, BY, ND. So now you know that CC, BY, ND, it means that we just need to use it as it is. And finally, CC, BY, NC, it means that it's not for commercial purposes, non-commercial CC. So you can use it, but for non-commercial purposes. Also, you can see that it might be a mix of a couple of those elements like BYNCSA. So it's a mix of non-commercial and share alike. So it allows others to remix, adapt, and build upon your work non-commercially as long as they credit you and use the same license. Or it might be a combination of non-commercial, non-derivatives. It means that you just need to use it as it is. You are not able to change it or modify it, and also you are not use it. You will not allow to use it for commercial purposes. So as you see, the most restrictive license, others can share your work with credit, but they cannot change it or they cannot use it commercially, like sharing your tutorial video for non-profit websites. Okay, cool. So that was all about the uh, different types of licensing in open source. Also here you will see Linux operating systems. Previously in my classes, I showed my students two distributions of Linux, and for the other class, probably you work with Ubuntu, one of the most user-friendly distributions of Linux, and Kali also, specifically designed for security purposes. I highly encourage you guys, if you find time in this December, January, I highly encourage, and I encourage myself as well, just to invest more time and more energy in learning Linux. It's very, very important if you wish to be in IT and if you wish to find a career in IT. I know that majority of us we are familiar with Mac operating systems or Windows operating systems, but it's very important to get yourself familiar with Linux commands, how it works. It's very, very useful tool in your toolbox. So just get this as an advice from me as a friend, not as a teacher. I try also myself to get myself familiar with different distributions. The problem with Linux operating system is different Linux families, they have different types of commands, and sometimes it might be pretty challenging to remember what was the command to perform this task in Ubuntu and what was the syntax to run this command in another platform like Arc. The syntax might be pretty different, but I reckon for the first step, it's good to start learning Linux in Ubuntu or Kali, which is pretty the same, or Debian-based Linux operating system. But what is Linux? It's an open source operating system used in a wide range of devices, even your mobile phones. It's built upon Unix platform or Linux operating system. It's highly customizable. It means that user they can modify and change the systems based on their own requirements, which is great. So when you purchase or if you're using Windows or Mac, we don't have too much flexibility to customize it or change it. So you just get what you see. There is no flexibility, or there might be limited flexibility to customize. One of the main and another main differences between Linux and Windows is it's a very light operating system. Later on, if you move to cert for in cybersecurity, we will work with different types of operating system in cert for in cybersecurity that they don't have a graphic user interface. Windows, Mac computers, even Ubuntu or Kali, they have a graphic user interface, which means you can see a colorful screen. You are able to use your mouse, you are able to right click, drag and drop, all of those features. But when it goes to purely in Linux environment, it's highly possible that you have only a CLI environment, only typing some commands to talk and cooperate with your operating system kernel. So it's very light, and when an operating system is lighter, it means that it's faster. There are less chances of slowness or getting stuck. It's highly customizable, so you can change it based on your own specific needs. And it's very important also to get yourself familiar. So it's licensed under the GPL. So anyone is able to modify, use, and share Linux. But any distributed modifications should also be open source. So if you just compare this with Windows or Mac OS, Windows, we don't have any options of flexibility. So when you get Windows 11 or Windows 10, it's Windows 10. I'm not able to customize it or change the configurations. No, it's already available. I just go and download it. And because I don't have access to the source code, I just need to use it as it is. But with Linux, you have access to the source code. So if you don't like the appearance, if you don't like some settings, if you want to modify it, imagine it's like getting a car and then you have the options to customize your car. I'm not just talking about the color or the interior design. Imagine that you have the options to fully build your own car. For some watches, I know that it's available to go and build your own watch with the with your favorite color, with your favorite bracelet, with your favorite bezel, or all of those things. You can fully customize it. That's the options that we have in Linux. Licensing and availability. So Windows requires users to buy a license when you want to use Windows 10, Windows 11, or Windows Server. If you go and install it, in the installation process, it asks you, do you have a license code? You can say, I don't have a license code and go and install it, but it keeps giving you some alerts. Some of the features might be not available for you, but it's not the case for Linux. You simply go to ubuntu.org, you can go to Kali, gmt20251210.org. You can download Linux and freely use it. Mac OS also, it's the same. It's pre-installed on Apple devices and it's only available for use on those devices. So there is no way to customize an iOS or Mac OS. Okay, cool. So here, if you want to do a quick search or if you want to think about it, there is a question: why do you think companies like Google or Facebook prefer to use Linux over closed source operating systems like Windows or macOS? Again, as I discussed, it's very good if we can learn more about Linux, how it works, learning different syntax in Linux instead for in cybersecurity. Majority of the assessments and activities are running in Linux environments. Here, for example, in Microsoft Azure, you see that we have a Windows, it's a Windows server. So we just go and work with Windows Server, but instead for in cyber, we will work with different Linux uh, environments. So if you have time and if you're keen to learn more in IT, I encourage everyone to invest more time. So why do you think these companies they prefer to use Linux? For servers, it's better to say web servers and servers. I would say I'm not 100% sure if I'm right or not, but I reckon it should be over 90% of servers running on Linux operating systems, not Windows. So there might be a question on why heaps of those servers are running on Linux. Majority of us, we are familiar and we find Windows or macOS pretty easy and user-friendly to work. Specifically when you go to Linux environments that they all are on command-based environments. Okay, so you can think of any reasons why some people or businesses they prefer to stick with closed source systems like Windows.
Can I answer this question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, please.
Um, s- I think the major difference is um, the support for those operating systems. The
Mm-hmm.
companies give their own support, Windows, for example, and there is an obligation on the Microsoft or Apple, if there is an operating system problem, to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Linux, it depends on who's the provider or supplier, and most of the time they may not be able to solve that problem.
Mm.
That they might be able to, I mean, it has to go, they can't solve every problem on the Linux base. For example, Red Hat
Mm-hmm.
or uh, CentOS or all
Mm-hmm.
this thing, they might not be able to go down at a deeper level of Linux to solve the problem.
Yes, good. Thank you so much for sharing your opinion. Any other opinion about it? Any other idea? So, Maxwell, what you say? Open source software is cost efficient.
Now, Mac OS is also a Linux system, not Linux, sorry, Unix system, which is based on System 5.
Mm-hmm.
So deep, you can give a Linux type of command in macOS. You can start a terminal and give exactly like the commands because it's still based on a Linux system. Or not really Linux, it's a System 5 Unix system.
Yes, I agree. Any other opinion? Any other opinion, guy?
And obviously, for some prefer Linux system just because I think there are those two things which you mentioned, uh, security through what was that, obscurity,
Of
and
security.
yeah, those type of things. So many people would love, uh, because in Windows and Mac OS everything is hidden. So even any soft any weakness is also hidden.
Yes. Yes,
Whereas
correct.
the whole philosophy of Linux is,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you are right. Because it's a closed-end service, it's a closed-end environment. Yes, also vulnerability might be also hidden, and there is no chance to
check.
find those vulnerabilities because we don't have access to see it. Yeah, I agree with you.
And with Linux, they say, well, if you think there is any weakness, you go and find it. There's a different way of approach to security.
I agree with you. Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, thank you so much, Francis, for your comments. Yes, I completely agree with you. Probably one of the reasons that big companies they prefer to use this Linux environment, I would say it's customizations. So as discussed for when you are using Windows or macOS, we don't have any opportunity or limited flexibility to customize it. But Linux provides that customization. It's very important to improve the performance, to add some security features. Imagine that if it's a web server, for example, it gives us more options to control the underlying operating systems if there is any unnecessary components. So we can get rid of it. Imagine, for example, in the next few months we have Grand Prix. So if you have a look, if you have the chance to have a look on inside the RC cars, those racing cars, they have nothing because they do everything just to reduce the weight, to give it more accelerations. They invest millions of dollars just to make sure that the car has the minimum weight. So if there is any unnecessary component, which might be a vulnerability, which might be an unnecessary options, they don't need it for that specific purposes. Linux gives them that option. The other reason that these big businesses they use Linux is scalability. In cloud environments, we will learn about scalability. So Linux is a very, very useful platform for scalability. It means that it allows us to quickly expand if we need, for example, to expand, or if we want to downsize, it's pretty easy to do that in Linux environments. For example, for data centers, for web servers, for containers, in cloud infrastructure, as I said. Later on, instead for in cybersecurity, if you proceed, you have two units in the cloud, and specifically in VicUni, we are working with AWS Academy and AWS environments, and you see it's possible just by a couple of clicks to expand one virtual machines to 1 million virtual machine. So getting this is pretty hard. I don't want to say it's impossible, but Linux provides this option for us to, as I said, increase the number of virtual machines just in a minute from 1 to 100, 1 million. Or if you don't need those virtual machines, to scale down again in a minute. Cost also is another thing. So Linux is free and reduce licensing costs, as you correctly mentioned. So when you are using Linux environments or Unix platform, cost also might be lower. Security, as discussed, Linux provides more control. So you can go and, as Francis currently mentioned, when you have access to open source, it's a good opportunity because in open source, as discussed, security provided by transparency. So you have access to the source code, you can go test, check what might be the vulnerabilities, and then you can secure it. That's the things that we don't have access in closed platforms. So it's a very good case for security also, finding vulnerability, fixing the vulnerability instantly. It doesn't mean that the closed source are not secure. We all know macOS or iOS are very secure operating systems also, but it's only Apple that have access to the source code and they can go check, test, and improve their security. Also, Linux is very good for automations. In our programming unit, we will learn one of the main advantages of using Python was for automations. And also, we know that Python has heaps of libraries. That's the case again for Linux. So it helps for automations using Python scripts, shell scripts, Kubernetes, Dockers, and etc. just to automate and orchestrate a wide range of services. And the other side, why people, for example, or businesses, they may prefer Windows or macOS environments. Obviously, the first thing is they are user friendly. They have GUI, they have a graphic user interface. It's pretty easy. Right click, click, double click, drag and drop. All of those things are easily visible. So they are more user friendly and they are easier for the beginners and they designed for everyday use comparing to command line environments that might be pretty hard because you need to memorize the syntax, you need to type the commands. It's possible that if you are not using those commands on a daily basis, after a while you will forget what was the syntax. Compatibility is another thing that we prefer to use macOS or Windows operating systems. Like for example, if you're using Adobe, if you're using Microsoft Office, they are easily compatible. That's not the case if you're using with some distributions in Linux. If you want, for example, to work with Microsoft Office, opening a Word file or an Excel file, It might be not compatible. Professional support also, as you mentioned, because macOS and Windows, they have a vendor and they provide regular updates, professional support. So it might be preferred over Linux because Linux is open source. Again, it doesn't mean that for Linux there is no support. As we discussed, Linux environment also has a big community created around it, and there are so many forums that you can go and ask your questions to find similar answers, and there are so many professionals that are able to help you with your questions. Standardizations also is another reason that we may use Windows over Linux. Windows by itself, it has so many features. One of the features that we saw in our previous unit was Active Directory. Active Directory is an awesome feature. It integrates with the cloud services. It's able to accommodate billions of users and devices. So we can standardize or improve standardizations. It has so many management tools, which might be a good option for companies. Heaps of businesses, they have Active Directory and they have Windows to manage their users and their devices. So these are some might be some reasons why Linux might be a good option, why Windows or macOS. So if I just merge these two questions and ask which one might be the best one, it depends. There is no best one. It depends on the purpose, it depends on the users, it depends on the content. In some situations, might be better to use Windows or macOS. In some situations, it might be better to use Linux. I would say majority of the times, it's better to have our user-faced services running on Windows or macOS and backend services to run on Linux. So that might be a general idea because when they are dealing with people, probably it's much easier for them to use graphic user interface environments like Windows or Mac. But for automation backend, probably it's better to use open source platforms. Okay, cool. So let's see what else. Oh, sorry, let me to reshare again, and there's another slide left. Let me go back again. Also, it's asking you to research the Android operating system and address the following questions. Identify the open source license used in Android, like GPL or LGPL or Apache. Discuss why Google use both permissive licenses like Apache. Explain the consequences of companies that modify Android's GPL license components. Analyze the challenges of using multiple license in a large project like Android. And also you can highlight what organization can learn from Google's approach to manage different open source licenses. Also here you can see there is a link to the Privacy Act 1988 and also Australian privacy principles. Cool. Let me show you a video which is very relevant to this topic. Give me a sec, so I share my screen. Okay, open source. Yeah, it's here. Let me share my screen.
By watching this video, you've taken advantage of software created by open source community of developers. But what does that really mean, open source? Is it just another way of saying free software? Well, it's true that open source software is distributed at no cost, but that's missing a much larger point. It's really about freedom. By this, I mean the freedom for users and developers to do much more with open source software. Okay, a quick bit of history. How did open source come about? Years ago, most large software projects happened inside private companies. They'd sell their proprietary software, typically with after-sales support. Then, in the early 80s, interest in open source projects picked up, but it really took off about a decade later with Linux. That's when developers began combining the two approaches, mixing proprietary software with open source. Red Hat is one of the best known examples, with Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or RHEL. But RHEL has an open source counterpart called CentOS. It's the free version of RHEL. So why did Red Hat donate the CentOS source code to an open source community? It's not about charity. Like a lot of for-profit companies, they've worked out a win-win situation. On one hand, the company gets help building and improving the base of their commercial product. On the other, open source devs get commercial grade code at no cost and the freedom to extend it. Okay, with that history behind us, let's cover the mechanics and answer a few who does what questions. As I mentioned earlier, open source allows you to improve and build upon a base. To get that done, you first need a few things. We begin with a repository. If you're going to share and collaborate, you need to make it easy to access. Repositories, or repos, as most developers call them, are collaboration platforms like GitHub, where you can get source code, report bugs, or suggest improvements. But more importantly, developers can contribute code that improves or fixes the existing code base. The repo is accessible and writable anywhere, so anyone can propose changes. The authors of these changes are referred to as contributors. They create their own local copy of the official repo and make changes. They ask for their changes to be merged into the official code with what's called a pull request. Anyone can be a contributor, but established members are what are called committers. They have review authority on any proposed changes. A committer is responsible for evaluating the pull request. The pull command copies down their change, and then they have a chance to review it. If they agree with the change, it's merged back into the main code. Committers enforce code standards and usually require test code that demonstrate the code works as promised. Becoming a committer requires you have a proven track record and other committers who are willing to vouch for the quality of your work. It's worth mentioning here that there's no requirement that an open source project be a certain size. It can be a one-person passion project or a huge developer effort. No matter its size, thanks to a common collaboration platform, open source isn't a free-for-all development project. In fact, once a project reaches a significant number of interested parties, and especially commercial interests, the handling of future changes and plans gets a lot more formal. This formal designation typically follows a pretty standard naming convention. It's the project name plus the word foundation. You think of Apache Foundation, Linux Foundation, Eclipse Foundation, you get the. Okay, this brings us to a final player, lawyers. Or more accurately, the open source license that spells out how the source is going to be distributed, modified, and other stuff like attribution. The most common is the GPL. That's the general public license. It guarantees 4 freedoms: freedom to run, study, share, and modify. This includes commercial for-profit uses too. Finally, it's a bit of a cliche, but success of an open source project takes a village. The common term is a community, and it's made up of users, contributors, committers, and foundation members. So basically, an open source project starts with a great idea, developers, and some code. But projects don't have to start from scratch. They might start from another open source project. One of the best known examples is Linux, which is based on Unix. If an open source project can get community interest, it gains contributors. Contributors eventually become committers. That user, contributor, committer cycle continues. With a good idea and a bit of luck, a project gets enough regular contributors and committers that its growth becomes self-sustaining. This cycle can also be turbocharged by industry contributions. For example, Kubernetes was open sourced by Google. Since it was based on their internal development, it benefited from Google's experience with container orchestration. The popularity of Kubernetes benefits adopters by allowing them to rely on a foundational layer of software. Developers can then focus their efforts on other projects, just like Red Hat did with RHEL and OpenShift. So what can you do if you want to join the open source movement? Start by becoming a contributor, or just reporting bugs. Once you have experience with the code, start by contributing bug fixes. Once a few of your submissions are accepted, you're well on your way to becoming a committer.
Okay, cool. For the next thing, let me go back to my board. Okay, cool. I hope that you liked the video. So let me go back to my board. Okay, cool. So we discussed about GPL, LGPL, and another tool that I just want to have a very brief chat so you just hear about the names is MIT and BSD. So firstly, let's talk about MIT license. MIT license. What is MIT license? Again, it's one of the simplest and most primitive open source licenses. Let me to put it down here. It is one of the easiest, or better to say simplest, open source licenses. So pretty similar to the previous cases. With MIT license, you are allowed to use the software for anything, even for commercial purposes. You are able to modify the software, you are able to copy and redistribute it, and also you are able to include any proprietary or closed source applications. You are able to sell it, but there is only one condition. So let me to put down all of this just to see what is the difference of MIT with the previous examples. So you are allowed to modify, so you can modify those contents, like modifying the software. You are able to copy and redistribute, copy, redistribute. You are able to sell. You are able to include it inside closed source, pretty similar to LGPL. You are able to include it inside closed source applications, but there is one condition here. Only one condition. What is that condition? You must include the original copyright and license text. So it's pretty good. It means that we are not required to release our modification version as open source. We are not required to share our source code. So imagine that it's an open source, I'm able to use it, but if a software has been licensed or protected under MIT license, then I'm able to use that part of software. I'm able to copy it, modify it, change it, redistribute it. I'm able to use it in another closed source applications or platform. I'm able to sell it. But the only things that I need to do, I should include the original copyright notice or the license text which means that I'm not required to release my modifications or changes. I'm not required to share my source code in a simple word. I can keep it secret or I can keep it closed. Just need to name the copyright and license text. And why it might be important for us, because many tools and libraries, some GitHub projects, they are MIT licensed. So if you see something in GitHub and it shows that it's MIT licensed, it means that they are pretty easy to integrate into your apps. There is no obligations or no legal restrictions, and it has minimum restrictions comparing to some other open source tools. The examples of MIT licensed softwares, let me to use another color like this. Examples might be React, React.js. Ruby is another example. It's another programming language, Ruby on Rails. It's licensed under MIT. And there are so many other security testing scripts, which means that it's a great option for use because it has minimum legal obligations. And also, as you see in my definition, it's one of the most simplest and most permissive open source licenses, which is great. And eventually, the last thing that I would like to have a brief chat, it's BSD license. It's a standing for Berkeley Software Distribution. If you heard about pfSense, a very, very famous firewall that we learn about it in cybersecurity, it's licensed under BSD or Berkeley Software Distribution, pretty similar to the previous one, MIT. It also has a very permissive open source license, very similar to MIT, with slightly minor differences in wording. Okay, so let's do put this down as well. It is a very permissive open source licenses. There are two versions of BSD. I don't want to go to this topic into detail. We have BSD and we have revised or new BSD. As discussed, it's very similar, very similar to MIT. And it means that you can simply use all the content protected by BSD license. You can use it, you can modify it, you can distribute it. You can even use it for the commercial purposes. You can include those softwares in a closed source platform or in a proprietary software. And let me put all of this in this column. So again, here you can use, modify, distribute, sell, or inclusion in closed source platforms and conditions. You just need to credit the original author. Okay. There's a bit of difference between the revised BSD and the simplified BSD, which is the out of content of our topic. We just wanted to know about these things. So what else? It seems that it's all. The last thing that I want to show you, which might be useful for our tomorrow session, let me reshare my screen. And it's the PowerPoint presentation number 4 in the additional resources. Let's to show you that. Close this, close this, close this. PowerPoint number 4. Let me reshare my screen. If you have a look on additional resources, now we are almost done with the PowerPoint presentation number 1 and number 2. Number 3, let me also show you that as well. Number 3, it's talking about the backup that we did it in our last week session. Let me show you that one first. So this is PowerPoint number 3. Let me go down. As you see, it's showing you how to log into your Microsoft Azure. I'm 100% sure that you all know how to do that. Username, student, and password infotech. Then it's asking you to log in with your student's credential. Let you go down. Step by step, it shows you. You can find all of those information in the email that I also sent to you to get access to your Microsoft Azure Labs. For those ones that they've been pretty close to the end of the 10 hours, today I extended their access to Azure Lab just to make sure that you have enough time for the current unit as well. You know that you need to just move the toggle from left to the light, wait for a few minutes just to see it turn to blue and it shows running, then to click on that desktop icon, you see all of this information that we did previously. Then running your Windows server, a few of you guys, you had your Windows server stuck and I fixed it for you. So I'm available now in case that you still have any issue. Feel free to log into Azure Lab and try to start your Windows server. If there is any issue, let me know and I fix it for you. Step by step, it shows all of those things. Enter the password. Password was infotech as we did in the previous session. Oh, why it's closed? Let me to reshare my screen again. It's stuck, it seems. Let to open it again. Sorry, because I have so many applications open on my PC, sometimes it happens. Let to open it again. Close.
Yeah, apart from so many applications, how many screens have you got?
Yes, I have 3 screens. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let to reshare it again. Cool. So putting down your password to log in. Yes, blah, blah, blah. Run the Windows server. Enter the password. So here, it might be useful tomorrow in our tomorrow session, as I promised and we discussed in the previous class. We will have a look on some of tools and options that we have in Windows Server. If you wish to try or give it a try, exactly, I will do the same things in our next session tomorrow. You see, it's talking you and helping you step by step. For example, on how to get access to Task Manager. Tomorrow I will do that. We go to our Windows server and we go to the search bar. We type Task Manager. As you see, step by step, it says go click on Task Manager. In Task Manager tomorrow, we will have a look what type of data we are able to get. For example, checking the performance of our computer, the memory, CPU, and etc. It's very important because in our units instead for in cybersecurity, there are 2 units that we create a real DOS attack. So we try to attack a server, and then we will see how it impacts the performance of a server. We will see that by running a DOS attack, we are able to crush a server. Also, in that unit, we will run this on a cloud infrastructure. For example, we have one virtual machine running on AWS. And then we create some triggers, like if the CPU performance goes over 80%, automatically go and install another two virtual machines. That was one of the benefits of using Linux, as discussed in our tonight class, scalability. With scalability, we are able to use different triggers. The trigger might be, for example, a time of a day or a time of a week. Imagine there is a PC, there is a virtual PC like the Microsoft Azure, and our web server is running on that server. Imagine in a Friday night or Saturday nights, it may experience a higher demand. For example, it's a web server, and in that time, there are more people logging to our website. So what we want to do, we want to see if the CPU is pretty close to 90 or 100%. It means that it's working at the maximum power, just to go and start another server, just to come and help, just to distribute the load across two virtual machines or three virtual machines. In reality, it might redistribute the load across hundreds of servers. For example, businesses like Netflix, in busy time, like in Friday nights or in Saturday nights, or in weekends or public holidays, they may experience a spike in the customers, in the people that are watching or visiting their websites. It's possible that in a minute they add an extra 10,000 servers. And the other way, it's possible in a minute they shut down 10,000 servers just to save the cost. We will learn more about that in our cloud units. But we will see that it's possible to create a DOS attack against a virtual machine just to bring the CPU performance up to pretty close 100%. And then you see that if you have that auto trigger, it's able to go and start some new virtual machines to protect against that DOS attacks, just to have a smooth experience. So we will see all of this in the task manager. Task manager is just like a dashboard in your car. Exactly the same way in your car, dashboard helps you to see the fuel level, to see the tire pressure, to see if there is any problem in the engine. Task Manager also is pretty similar. It helps you with too much information. I will discuss more about the Task Manager in our tomorrow class. That's one of the features that you can find in Windows. It helps you step by step. It says you can open Task Manager by pressing Control Shift Escape on your keyboard, or just by right clicking on your taskbar and then selecting Task Manager, or just going to the Windows search and type Task Manager. So if you have time tomorrow morning or today, you can have a look on this PowerPoint number 4, managing system performance. As you see, we will talk more about Task Manager in our next session. But in this slide, you see the CPU is around 25%, memory is around 44%. There are some applications also that they show you the temperature of your CPU, which is very important. Sometimes if the CPU keeps working hard, or if there is any problems in the cooling system. We had one question in our previous unit was asking about a CPU. It's getting hot in a spike time or in the busy time. Is it a hardware malfunction? Is it a cyber attacks, or none of them? There are some applications that show all of those information. It might be pretty easy to find this, or maybe ask what might be the point of finding a CPU temperature. But when it's a big data center with hundreds of servers, it's important. As I said, for next year, for 2026, just before today class, we have another meeting that John is my manager. He's the head of the IT and cybersecurity department. He said that we finalize everything with Microsoft, and from next year, we start two new courses, data center managements. And one of those courses is mainly talking about data center maintenance, cooling, data centers, physical maintenance, monitoring, checking, and all of those things. It might be an interesting field for you. Not only Microsoft, AWS, and big names that are working on and spending on data centers, the small businesses also, they may keep or they may own their critical infrastructure on a big environment. So it's very important to be on top of the performance of our physical resources. Let's move on. As I said, tomorrow we will go a step by step, have a look on this tools resource monitor. As you see, again, it tells you how to get access to it, what it does, how to get access to it, what type of information you can find in resource monitoring. As you see, like CPU, disk, network, and memory usage, some statistic about each processes and etc. Network monitoring, which is very important. Imagine that you have a job as a network admin or network engineer, and you have the responsibility to oversight network traffic. What might be some basic tools that you have available in your Windows environments? Windows Event Viewer. Tomorrow we will have a look on Event Viewer. It's pretty similar to a CCTV camera in your Windows. Exactly the same way that you have a motion detector or a CCTV cam that it's a start recording when there is a movement. Event Viewer also gives you an oversight of what happened in your PC. We will have a look on Windows Event Viewer tomorrow as well. We will see what types of information we are able to get, why it's useful for security, maintenance purposes, for forensic purposes, to use Windows Event Viewer. That we will do it with each other in our tomorrow class. If you want to give it a try, you're welcome to do that. Just have a look on this PowerPoint presentation and then log into your Microsoft Azure and then go and check all of these tools. As you see, it says Event Viewer. It provides detailed information about the logs or events. And it's very important for tracking user activity in an organization. It helps you to see which users are logged into your system, as well as details of the systems and applications they are accessing. We will have a look on Windows Event Viewer in our tomorrow class as well. Also, here you see the flowcharts in a system design. Or can I explain that relationship between client and server? So technically, a client is any device requesting for something, and in the other side, there might be another device providing those type of services, like getting access or giving access to your email, giving access to a website, giving access to your music. And it's a server. There might be multiple services running in a server. Also, if you remember in our previous sessions when we went to the Windows server, we went to Active Directory. In order to get access to Active Directory, if you remember, firstly, I started a server manager. In the server manager, if you remember, there have been two steps. The first step was role, and the second one was features. In the roles, if you remember, there have been heaps of different services that you are able to install in a Windows server, like a DHCP, like, for example, a mail server, and one of them was Active Directory. Okay, I just leave this for you, and tomorrow we will have a closer look on these features in Windows Server. Let me also to have a look on your questions in the chat box. Do we have to complete assignments for module ICT 313? Yes, please. Please complete the assignments for that unit. Tomorrow we will work on assessment task 2. Assessment task 1, just like usual, I leave it for you. It's just a couple of questions that you need to answer. It's a quiz for task 2. Tomorrow we go through exactly the same way that I did for our previous unit. We will have a look on Microsoft Azure and we work with each other. If any one of you guys, you are happy to share your screen, that should be awesome. And we will work through assessment task 2 in our tomorrow class. What else? Plenty of photos taken by NASA, for example, a public domain. Yes, thank you so much, Lean. You can get in a lot of trouble using AI on a code base like the GPL, Google, for a good example of this. Cannot understand the distributions or modifications to GPL. Should be copyleft. Yes, go Penguin. Linux distros, open source software is cost efficient, customer and general friend good. Also, with closed source software, the distribution can lock the running. Correct. Confirming virtual machine shows 15 hours. Good. 10,000 physical virtual servers. Yes, it might be even more than 10,000. Yes, you have access to millions of virtual machines just in less than a minute. Yes, correct. How long the durations of those data center courses? It should be 6 months, and it's only face to face. I think that there should be three. I know that if you are working on daytime, it might be pretty challenging, but if you know anyone that they might be interested, one of the good things about these data center courses is a high rate of employment. But we cannot guarantee because it's the Microsoft that they are hiring, but we know that there is a high chance of getting a job in data center, specifically in Microsoft or any other data center. As discussed, we are the second provider across Australia that we are delivering data center courses. It should be a 6 months, 3 day per week, I think, face-to-face delivery, and our two courses. We put all of this information shortly in our website, but as discussed, one of them is talking and dealing with maintenance of a data center, and the other one is dealing about the technical side of data center. If you might be interested, I highly also encourage you. Let me reshare my screen. Screen one. Yes. If you just go and search for CompTIA, there are so many certificates that you can get. CompTIA is a very famous, well-known provider. Let's have a look on CompTIA website. Obviously, it's not part of Cert 3 or not part of Cert 4. It's not mandatory. I'm just giving you some advice if you want to improve your resume and get more familiarity with IT things. CompTIA is a very well-known, famous provider, and they provide heaps of certifications. If you have a look here on CompTIA, as you see on the top, explore career, certifications, enterprise, and etc. If you have a look on certifications, they have a bunch of certifications in AI, cloud, cyber, data skills, networking, and tech support. For example, for networking, they have certificates like A plus networking. It's very, very good a step if you think about getting a job in networking. A plus is one of the basic certificates that you can get from CompTIA. What you need to do, you just need to go and read the content, and when you feel that you are ready and comfortable with the content, you need to book for an exam. It's a exam certificate. It means that you need to book for an exam. There are a couple of providers across Melbourne that you can book. You need to pay for the exam, and then you need to sit, and if you pass, you get the certificate, which highly improve your resume if you want to get a job in IT. It's pretty competitive industry at this stage. So you can have a look. They have different types of certifications. I have a few of them, but if you ask me how to improve your skills, CompTIA is one of those ones. Also, in our previous sessions, Mahmoud also mentioned another thing. Probably the other class that you already have the networking, you are familiar with NetAccount, but this is a very, very good resource if you have time. Obviously, there is no class in December, January. Just go and search for NetAccount, NETACAD, Network Academy. Let me log in. So if you want to get access to NetAccount, it doesn't cost you anything. You just need to log in with your Google account, and there are heaps of resources available. Let me show you that. And Educator, Learner. So when you create your account in NetAccount, if you just go and click here on the Explore, it provides so many free training for cybersecurity, for networking, AI programming, IT, digital literacy, and etc. For example, in cybersecurity, if I expand it, you see there is 3.3 courses showing here. You can expand it to see all of them. Introduction to Cybersecurity. It's a very, very high quality course, and it's free. 8 million already enrolled. Let's have a look. It's an interactive training. It shows you that it's a beginner level. It has 6 hours. It has 7 labs, which is awesome. Also, when you finish all of this training, it gives you a certificate that you can download it and put it in your LinkedIn account. If you don't have a LinkedIn account, I highly encourage you to create one with a nice photo because you are in IT and you wish to get a job in IT. So it's very important to have a professional LinkedIn account, and then it gives you a badge that you can upload it into your LinkedIn. You'll see that it's talking about introduction of cybersecurity attacks, etc. Then, for example, if I go and expand one of these modules, you see it's talking about cyber attacks, cyber warfare, quizzes, what was taken, all of those things. It's a very, very high quality training. You can just have a look. And it's not only in cybersecurity, any field that you might be interested. For example, let me go back and networking. I expand networking. You see networking basics. 1.4 million people enrolled in this course. Resume the course. And then if you have time over these next 2 months, I highly encourage you. It's talking about wireless mobile networks, how to build a home network, how to build a small network, and it's highly improve your familiarity if you move to cert for in cyber, or if you move to cert for in IT, or even if you move to diploma of IT or diploma of networking. That's the foundation. It's the very basic courses. I highly encourage you to have a look. If it's free, just go and enroll it, because Cisco, it's developed by Cisco. Cisco courses are bloody expensive. So expensive. Not all of them are available. Some of those courses might be available through some specific providers. VU is one provider. There are a couple of providers across Melbourne as well. But it doesn't mean that all the courses that you see here, let me go, for example, to networking and see all the courses. If it shows it's free, as you see here, it shows it's free, you can simply go and enroll. Some of them, like this one, intermediate, and it doesn't show it's free. Networking essentials or CCNAs or networking technicians, it doesn't show it's free. So you need to go and find some providers like this one, for example, CCNA, enterprise networking, switching, routing, and etc. There are some providers, but it doesn't mean that it's free. That's okay. Even doing those free ones, it teaches you a lot in IT. So don't rely only on the certificate 3. It's good to invest on industry certificates. So Cisco Networking Academy, and CompTIA are very good resources. You can go read the content. With the CompTIA, you can purchase the books. You can simply go type. If you go to a library also, you can borrow those books. CompTIA A plus books or PDF. You can simply go search for the books. You see there are so many books, $15, $55. You can purchase the books or read the content online, get ready for the exam, sit for the exam, and when you pass it, you get that certificate. There are so many. Some of them are in high level. For example, it has CompTIA Pen Test Plus, it has CompTIA, as you see here, Pen Test Plus, Ethical Hacker, CISA, so many. But it's just good to start with the very basic one. ACE Plus is this very basic one. Or you can go to Cisco Networking Academy. And based on your interests, if you're interested to cybersecurity, networking, AI, even programming, you see here, programming, Python essentials, JavaScript essentials, C++ essentials. There are so many courses that you can go enroll from learner to leader. There are so many courses available for free here. Doesn't cost you anything. It takes.
So I mean,
Yeah.
CompTIA doesn't provide the training, is it? It just does the certification.
Certifications, yes. For the books, you just need to go and get the books from third-party providers or from CompTIA. Yes, it's just for certification.
And do you know of any providers of the training?
For the training, yeah, if you just go and search it in Google, yeah, there are so many in Melbourne. I cannot recommend any one of them, but yeah, there are some providers, CompTIA providers, training providers in Melbourne. For example, you can go and search for it. Yeah, there are a couple of providers in Melbourne. And not only they provide CompTIA, they provide training for AWS, for Microsoft Azure, AWS training providers, Melbourne, for example. But it doesn't need to cost at this stage. Uh, as you see, there are so many free resources. As you see, there are so many providers across Melbourne. But anyway, that's free. Firstly, let to finish those free ones to see that this one takes 40 hours to learn Python, 30 hours to learn Python essentials. So these are two. There are so many others as well. Slowly, I try to give you more insight about those um, platforms. Another one comes to my mind now is CB Nuggets, CBT Nuggets. So it's specifically designed for training IT experts, expert IT training when and where you will need it. The subscription for CBT Nuggets, I reckon it's a little bit higher. I reckon it's like $100 monthly, but it has so many courses that you can go and search, but it's a very high quality provider for IT resources. What else? There are another two, Udemy. Probably you are familiar with Udemy and Coursera. Udemy also has so many free resources. Udemy, you just need to create an account. And then, for example, if you're interested to networking, you just need to go search for networking, networking, click. Some of the trainings are free, some of them you need to pay. Also, I know that you are able to get a monthly subscriptions and you will have access to all the content. Subscriptions, I think it should be $30 or $36 per month, like a burger and chips and Coca-Cola. But yeah, you will have access to so many. You see fundamentals of networking, networking engineering, CCNA, so many for any topic. For any topic that you think in IT, networking, pen testing, penetration testing, pen testing, IT help desk, IT support help desk. There are so many resources available here. You see the rating. You can check how many hours probably does it take. You can see the previous student feedback, ratings, difficulty level. You can just go and search, for example, for beginner level. Yes, so Udemy is another platform that you can go search for different courses, not only in IT, in any field. For example, I want to be a good negotiator because when I go to the interview sessions, I'm not able to express myself. I need to improve my negotiation skills. So technically, not only for your IT skills, hard skills, you can find courses for soft skills, negotiation skills. There are some courses that you can improve your soft skills as well. Anything that you can imagine, you are able to search in Udemy. And the last one is Coursera. That's another platform pretty similar to Udemy. So Coursera, you can go search, for example, Google Data Analytics Professional Certificate. You can get a certificate. You can search, again, pretty similar to Udemy. You can search for different topics. And then it's a little bit more expensive compared to Coursera. I think it's like $80. Still, it should be less than $100 a month if you want to get the subscription. And then you can go and search for different courses in Coursera as well. Like, for example, I'm interested to virtualizations. Virtual operating system virtualizations for anyone. So you can simply search for any area in IT, introduction to cloud computing. So let us search for that. You see introduction to cloud computing, Google Cloud fundamentals, preparing for cloud, Google Cloud cybersecurity, and so many that you can go search. Again, you can see the reviews, you can see the level of difficulty and all of those things. So that's all. So you have now access to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 platforms. And as I show you, there are heaps of free resources. That's that's a dream. I remember when I was doing my bachelor in like 22 years ago, we didn't have access to heaps of these resources. And I remember that I used to go to libraries and we need to take notes. Now, with just a few clicks, obviously, the scope of knowledge is much wider this stage, this time. But yeah, you have access to heaps of these resources. You just need to spend a bit of time and improve your IT skills. I hope that you enjoyed this. Professor Mesa is good one to subscribe to. Thank you so much, Karin. Waiting to complete any CompTIA. Good to know. There are a lot of videos on YouTube that help with CompTIA exams. Correct. What's the deadline for ICT 313? So the cutoff date, to be honest with you, the cutoff date is next Friday, 19th, because after that, the system goes for maintenance and update. So just do your best to complete it by next Friday. But tomorrow I will go to assessment task 2 and you should be ready to upload your assessment task. And next week there is no teaching. So 16, 17, and 18, there should be no teaching over those 3 sessions. I will be still available for support, but if you're happy with your assignments, tomorrow should be technically our last session. And that's it. So thank you so much, guys. I hope that you enjoyed the tonight session. Let me to stop recording.